All right, Billy, I will hand it over to you.
All right, that sounds great. Good morning, everybody, and happy Wednesday, or happy Thanksgiving, or happy Indigenous Peoples Day, or the day before, um, or no, 2 days before, I guess. Forget I said anything. So anyhow, it's really nice to be here. My name is Billy Parker. I'm with Chandler Gilbert Ark. I'm executive director here, and have also been a mobility manager for about 10 years. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about um, a number of items. Next slide, please. So what we'll talk about a little bit today will be really mobility management. And then when it says the ways to share vehicles, I really kind of have always made that sort of one of my most important items as a mobility manager, is to really look at ways of sharing assets among people who need them. I don't look so closely at sharing assets among just 5310 recipients, but really among the community. And so a lot of the stuff that I look at and I focus on are vehicle lending, vehicle disposals, brokerage, and different things like that. And really with the core mission being, let's make sure everybody gets to where they need to go whenever they can. And so that's really a lot of the focus on that. Again, as I said, I'm executive director for Chandler Gilbert Ark. I've been here since 1994. Been in the executive director's role since 2013. I've worked in developmental disabilities since 1983. Started in Montana, worked there for about 5 years, moved to Oregon, worked there for I think another 5 years, and then moved to Arizona. Like I said, I've been here since 1994. So, and have been involved in the 5310 program ever since I started working here. So, I did my first 5310 grant through ADOT in, I think, 1994 for vehicles. So I've got sort of a long history and a long relationship with the 5310 process. And I really feel like it's helped me to kind of understand not only the provider perspective, but also the perspective of the government agencies, whether it be ADOT, whether it be City of Phoenix, or whether it be Maricopa Association of Governments. So in doing that, I really feel like I've been able to sort of gain some knowledge on really how to sort of share assets, diversify assets, and really kind of look at the sort of the big picture as far as transportation goes, and to try to be of support to as many people as we can. And so again, and in mobility management, like I said, that's something I've been doing for 10 or 11 years. And it's really kind of given me also a perspective on the number of 5310 providers that are out there, and what kind of needs are out there in terms of transportation or transportation assistance. So next slide, please. Next slide after that. Okay, so I kind of started calling this training "Let Me Out of This Box" just because a lot of my training sort of evolve with time. So as I learn new things about different transportation related items, I kind of I continually sort of modify the trainings that I do. So if you've been to my trainings before, most likely you'll hear some stuff that you've heard before, but you'll also hear some stuff that you have not heard before. And so I think I started calling it Let Me Out of This Box just because I felt like in terms of resource sharing, it feels like sometimes that we're sort of stuck within the bureaucracy of asset sharing, and which I kind of equate as the box. And so the whole idea of a lot of the trainings that I do is to try to make these processes as user friendly as they can. And so in looking at that, really, that's why I'm here providing this training to you. And I've done these trainings for a number of years. And so I can sit and talk for the entire time, and you, if you have no questions or you have nothing to say, but really, I really welcome anybody's comments, feedback, questions, or anything like that. I'd much rather make the training a more interactive experience for everybody. So please, don't hesitate to either raise your hand, put a message in the chat box, or just ask a question. So I'm always looking to sort of create that dialogue and to kind of really personalize the training as much as possible. So please accept that invitation for sure. And think about what it is in transportation that you're looking for as it relates to asset sharing and vehicle lending and all that stuff. So next slide, please. Okay, there's a survey question. Okay, terrific. That's excellent to know. Nice to know that everybody's a Section 5310 recipient. And the reason I say that is because so much of the information that I'll provide to you is really unique to Section 5310. So that's excellent. Thank you. 100%. I'll keep track of that. All right, next slide, please.
Billy, I can send you those results afterwards too. They all get captured in the recording.
Oh, yay. All right. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, next page. So just to give you an idea of what mobility management is about, I am a sub-regional mobility manager. And so what that basically means is that the region, the Maricopa County region is broken off into sections, and there's a number of mobility managers that work in the same role as I do or as my organization does. So in terms of mobility management, I'm sort of the face of mobility management, and I have been for a long time, but really our mobility management process is really a team. If we're lending a vehicle to somebody, we have people involved in the vehicle, everything from our maintenance person to our transportation dispatcher, to people in our HR office that are looking into different kinds of insurance ideas and challenges and different things like that. So we really act as a team, whereas I'm sort of the face of mobility management. But in looking at it, the key that I see to mobility management is really understanding the needs and the resources, putting the two together, and then developing user-friendly processes to connect. It's more the third bullet point than anything else, is really kind of looking at where are the resources, where are the needs, and how do we make them, how did we make it so that they find each other and they can connect? So next slide, please. Again, more responsibilities, connecting people to human services transportation opportunities, providing support to individuals that need transportation related assistance, and ensuring the efficient use of federal resources through coordination. So really a lot of what we'll talk about today will be coordination, it will be collaboration, coordination, and all stuff that's really required as federal recipients, which we all are. So that is a really important aspect of mobility management. An important aspect of being a 5310 recipient is making sure that we're using those federal resources correctly and looking really closely at what coordination is too and what collaboration is. The fact that you're at this training counts as coordination. So make sure that when you go to do your 5310 grant proposal, you talk about the fact that you came to this training, and that all counts as coordination. So next slide. Okay, this is just a statement that was shared with me by Wendy Miller, who no longer works in the same role as she was. She was with the city of Phoenix and in the transportation department. And she kind of, she wrote this to me as I was putting this training together. And so really looking at vehicle sharing, which we now call vehicle loaning, is really sort of the essence of coordination in terms of, I have a vehicle, you need a vehicle, I'll let you use my vehicle. And so that's a whole aspect of something that we will be talking about today as well. Next slide. Okay, we'll talk about vehicle sharing, the benefits, the challenges, the process, ideas and experiences. I can answer questions and I can provide resources. Next slide, ways to share vehicles. You can go one more too. Okay, so in kind of looking at vehicle sharing, and in order to really be able to effectively look at vehicle sharing, it kind of has helped me to really break it down into sort of general aspects of vehicle sharing. So when we look at it, so we look at vehicle loaning, have to look at all the different ways of sharing. So the first one is ride sharing, which would mean my agency would go and pick somebody up from your agency and take them. And the reason I do that is because maybe I go right by their house or something like that. That's an issue that we've discussed extensively with other agencies, especially agencies that are close by. And so as we continue to look at that, we continue to see that as a possibility. We have not yet done that. We've had a couple of opportunities to do that, to transport other people's clients or members or service recipients, and have not yet done that. But we still see it as a potential option. Also, as you can imagine, some of the issues that comes up with ride sharing is who takes responsibility for the person while they're receiving the ride from you. If you're transporting someone else's person or someone else's service recipient, how do you transfer that liability? How do you know that person well enough in order to be able to do that transportation? All things that are good questions, but they're all things that are very possible. So we still consider that a potential option, and we still continue to explore it. So next slide. Okay, there's also time sharing. So this is an option of where two or more organizations operate the same vehicle for a portioned amount of times. So generally, one organization will own or lease the vehicle to other organizations. So the idea behind that is, let's say I have a vehicle that I own and I use it from July to December. And then I send the vehicle over to you and you lease the vehicle from me and you use it from January to June. And it's another way of kind of looking at, if, let's say, between January and June, I don't have as strong of a transportation need. So that would be a good time for me to let somebody else use my vehicle. So that's another issue that we've also looked at, even looked at it so far as to discuss with other provider agencies of taking, let's say, two service organizations, creating a nonprofit with those two organizations, and then that nonprofit would actually be the entity that applied for a vehicle through Section 5310, and then you share the vehicle evenly, or you come up with an arrangement of how you're going to share the vehicle, but it's owned by a single organization that's made up of two organizations. So all stuff that we also continue to discuss, that to just look at what's the most efficient way to use those resources. Next slide. So when it comes to vehicle sharing, there's also agency to agency where you develop a working agreement, you have a volunteer agreement, and you have transferred liability. And the reason I came up with this is that I used to work with another mobility manager that had an organization up in the Cave Creek area that they actually had a complete volunteer driving program. And so anybody that needed to use their vehicle would apply to their organization, become a volunteer with that organization, and then transport individuals that that organization transports as a volunteer driver. That volunteer driver can also transport the people that they serve as well. So let's say I run a service organization and the people that I support need transportation. I go to this other agency and I say, I want to be a volunteer with you. And then they say, okay, you can be a volunteer. You can transport people that we ask you to transport, but you can also transport your own people as a volunteer with us. So then I would go to their organization as a volunteer, pick up the vehicle, transport my people, maybe transport other people, and we would have a working agreement to where I did that. And then the liability for the insurance liability for that vehicle would happen through the organization to which I am a volunteer for. So it was a pretty effective option, created a lot of transportation opportunities for a lot of people. And I don't know if they're still doing that because that mobility manager is no longer in the valley. But the last I heard, they still were doing it. So I think it's a great option. And it also enables people that maybe don't even have a vehicle to transport the people that they're serving, to have access to somebody else's vehicle and be able to sort of trade volunteerism for transportation. So next slide. So again, it's an exclusive volunteer infrastructure. The drivers are volunteers. And the one asset that I found that was shared with me about this organization is that the reciprocity through the volunteerism was what really kept their transportation program going effectively. So if I'm transporting people that I support using your vehicle, I also agree to transport other people that need rides. And so I'm sort of reciprocating that option that I have to use the vehicle and helping to support other people. The other thing that was noted about that too is oftentimes when they're volunteer programs like that, they end up getting supported through donations and different things like that because they're out there providing that service using volunteer drivers. So it's a really great option that I think people we sort of fall into our roles as transportation providers of these are our vehicles, these are the people we transport, and this is how much money we get to do it. And so some of these options are just a little bit different, a little bit are pretty creative options for making sure that people that sort of don't have funding for transportation or people that don't have vehicles to transport people can actually have access to transportation. So next slide. Any questions so far? Okay. Again, as I was mentioning before, we really kind of like to try to look at transportation from a real sort of broad spectrum so that we can then kind of look at what some options might be that result in coordination or collaboration. So we worked on a project together in 2021 on vehicle brokerages. So kind of looking at how do I, as somebody that runs a nonprofit, look at the whole idea of vehicle brokerage or sharing vehicle or transportation resources. And so we came up with 4 really distinct brokerage models. The first one being one call, one click. So where somebody is a centralized entity and people contact us to request trips, whether it's trips that they pay for or whether it's trips that are free. And we know that there are organizations out there that currently do that. Next slide. And then there's also the idea of a combined shared fleet. So let's say there's an agency near my agency that has a fleet of vehicles and we decide, okay, we're going to combine our fleets and we're going to call it one fleet. So we will share the responsibility for the upkeep on the vehicles and we'll share the responsibility for the transportation of people and we'll transport the people that need the transportation on behalf of one another. So again, that kind of goes back to the previous definition where I was talking with you about people applying for a single van, 2 agencies owning a single van. This is kind of like 2 agencies who own their own fleets, but they use each other's vehicles. So that's another brokerage option. So next slide. Then there's the whole idea of brokering vehicles, kind of like a rental agency. That kind of a relationship for a member agency. So you'd have people that you'd work with that would work sort of like a rental agency. The difference in that with a 5310 asset, though, is that you can't rent a 5310 asset. So when I get into talking about our vehicle loaning program, we'll kind of spend more time talking about that, like the fact that we allow other organizations to use our vehicle or our vehicles, but we don't charge. So that's why it's loading. But on the same token, there's a small handling charge that we charge just for sort of handing people keys and things like that. But that whole idea, this whole brokerage of vehicles idea is kind of like you're a rental agency, but you're not charging rent. But you have the bunch of the same requirements that a rental car place would provide to people. So okay, next slide. Okay, higher brokerage again, and that's like a third party. Okay, so as far as a brokerage model, that would be like a company like Total Transit, which I don't even know if I think they're still around, but um, but that's the whole idea of a brokerage, kind of an idea where a third party would actually own the vehicle and you just hire them to provide transportation to the people that you support, which is again not a very potential option, not without its share of challenges, especially considering that usually someone like Total Transit would probably charge more to provide transportation to a person than maybe my organization gets paid to do the transportation. So those again are the kind of things that you have to sort of look at when you think about it. But so that's the four brokerage models. And again, as I mentioned, the whole idea of that is to kind of really be looking at what those brokerage options are. Not, it could be that you look at it and you think, well, none of them really work for me. But in some cases, sometimes you can take an sort of an idea, the concept of that model, and kind of also tailor it to your own, which is really what we as an agency have done with our vehicle loaning program, is kind of take this one of these ideas and kind of look at what the challenges are and look at how to work around those challenges. And like I said, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Okay, next slide. There's a survey. And I think there's actually two surveys. Yeah. Excellent. Um, that's really good to know. And thanks for filling that out. It's nice to see that almost half of you have had some experience with disposal of 5310 assets. So, and also both with the city of Phoenix and ADOT. So that's really great. You can go to the next slide, Lauren, if you could. Great. Okay, terrific. Uh, okay, so what we're going to talk about now is um, disposal of vehicles through mostly through the city of Phoenix. Um, we, as an agency, this whole project started because um, a couple of years ago, because we, as an organization, we've been filling out these uh, proposals for so long that we had vehicles that went back to, you know, early 2000s and even older that had kind of been pretty much worn out. But we found every time we tried to get rid of them in any way that there was just so much red tape in trying to do it that it was easier to just put them into like very occasional rotation in order to keep them running and that sort of thing. But we could never get rid of them. So then we really decided to get serious about it and really started looking more closely into exactly what the process was for disposing of vehicles. And that really prompted all of this training that I do in this now. And so we were able to sell a couple of years ago, we sold, I think, 7 vehicles, all that were like super old. And and so that kind of really kind of got us in the groove of understanding the process. And then I sort of made it a mobility management project for myself to really simplify the disposal process because I really recognize that that's sharing assets, that's coordination, and that's collaboration. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so in doing that, I worked very closely with Wendy Miller, who used to work for the city of Phoenix, now works for Meg. But we started really breaking down the vehicle disposal policy with the city of Phoenix and looking at it. And with my goal, making it something that a transportation provider can understand, that you don't have to be a government official or that you could sort of read and see more the specifics of really making that a functional document. So it's been through 3 changes. The most recent one was May of 2024, and it really breaks the process down and has simplified it a lot, and which I'm real grateful for. And I have now been kind of recognized as a person that any of you can contact if you have an interest in disposing of a vehicle, whether you want to sell it, donate it, buy out the federal interest, etc. There's lots of options that you have. So that's really part of why I put this training together. So one of the key pieces of the training is to determine first what useful life is. And I think that in a lot of cases, people have equated useful life with the actual condition of the vehicle or the value of the vehicle, and it really is not. Useful life is a measurable definition, and as you can see on the slide, for minivans and passenger vans, it's 4 years or 100,000 miles, and raised roof and cutaways is 5 years or 150,000 miles. So that if you have a vehicle and you haven't driven it much at all for 5 years, and the vehicle's got 40,000 miles and you cross the 5-year mark, it is considered to be beyond its useful life without regard to really the condition of it. And that's one of the tricky definitions about that I think get people confused sometimes. So as you can see, this information and the information I have on these slides comes directly from that policy that you're looking at the hyperlink for at the top of the slide there. So again, that document is available either by clicking on the hyperlink, or you can contact me, or you can ask Lauren or somebody else if you need access to that. And I think it's also on the MAG website. So that's sort of the first piece of Vehicle disposal is determining useful life. Okay, next slide. Okay. There are 4 options available. It looks to me like there's only 3. I better fix that next time. 4 options available to dispose of a vehicle that have reached their or exceeded their useful life. So we know what useful life is. And so if we have a vehicle that's past useful life, whether it be 4 years or 5 years or 100,000 or 150,000, you can keep the vehicle and use it for another transit project or another program. And it's my understanding too that if you want to convert that vehicle into one of your maintenance vehicles, you can do that as long as it's supporting your program. You can sell the vehicle either privately, you can sell it through an auction, or you can sell it through a third-party dealer. That's the second option. The last option is you could buy out the federal interest. And so that's one of the ones that in talking to people at the city of Phoenix, I have not heard of anybody that's actually done that. But the whole idea behind buying out the federal interest is in most cases, vehicles that have been received through the 5310 program are on an 80-20 split. So the feds pay 80% of the cost of the vehicle. You as the recipient pays 20%. If a vehicle is appraised over $5,000, then you can buy out the federal interest by paying the FTA 80% of whatever the amount is that's over $5,000. And if you do that, then the vehicle becomes yours, the title becomes yours, and you're no longer subject to any of the 5310 rules and requirements, inspections, and all of that, everything that's related to them, because that vehicle is now no longer a 5310 asset. Does that make sense to everybody, or does anybody have questions about that particular option? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so there are 3 options to dispose of a vehicle before the end of the useful life. So what that means is the vehicle is not minivans and passenger vans less than 4 years or less than 100,000 miles, and cutaways and lift vans 5 years, 150. So if you have a reason to get rid of them, you can do a like-kind exchange where the federal interest, if there's any due, is applied to a replacement vehicle, or it's returned to the FTA, or you can transfer the vehicle to another grantee. Now, where this issue gets tricky is most of the time, if a vehicle is disposed before the end of the useful life, it's either because an organization is shut down, or the vehicle is totaled. And so, and in the policy, it speaks to that. And so if you were to do a like-kind exchange or return the federal interest to the FTA, it has to be based on the condition of the vehicle before it was totaled. So, and then there's a bunch of rules that relate to if you have an insurance settlement on that vehicle that was totaled and you get paid for it, then that's the settlement money that you use to either apply toward a like-kind exchange or a replacement vehicle, or if you return the federal interest to the FTA. So if your vehicle was worth $10,000 and you got a $10,000 check from the insurance company because the vehicle was totaled, and you want to get another vehicle, and the federal, your portion of the interest on the new vehicle, you would use that $10,000 and apply that toward the vehicle. If you don't have enough, then you have to add to it. And if you have too much, I'm not sure what happens with that. That's one of the kind of things that you'll hear from me a lot today, that when you're going through this process, no matter how specific I make this on this slideshow and on this training, it really comes down to speaking with the representative with the city of Phoenix and sort of working through that process. And then I also put an additional note at the bottom saying that if you dispose of a vehicle before the end of the useful life, you are not allowed to apply for vehicles for the next 2 grant cycles after that either. So it's another piece to, to kind of really look at closely. If you have something that's before the end of the useful life and before getting rid of it. So, okay, next slide, please. Okay, the next piece here is determining fair market value. So there's the whole idea of federal interest and what the vehicle's worth and different things like that, that all that has to be determined before you can find out whether or not you actually owe the FTA anything back. Because again, as I mentioned, any value over $5,000 becomes the responsibility of the subrecipient to pay back to the FTA if they're going to sell the vehicle or if they choose to buy out the federal interest. So in order to figure that out, of course, you have to come up with fair market value. So the nice thing about the city of Phoenix is if you have an accessible vehicle that needs repairs or does not need repairs, the city of Phoenix engages a dealership and they do a desktop appraisal. And the dealership that does that is Model 1, which was formerly Arizona Bus Sales. And they will do a desktop appraisal. Now, also, if your vehicle needs repairs, then the subrecipient can also get a repair quote and furnish that to either Model 1 or to the city of Phoenix to give to Model 1, because when they look at the value of the vehicle, they will do a desktop appraisal. But if you have a repair quote that's needed, then that repair quote can come off of the top of the appraisal that's done by the city of Phoenix. So for example, let's say a vehicle is appraised by the city of Phoenix for $9,000, but you've also provided a $4,000 repair quote to get the vehicle back to safe operation. So now that's $9,000 minus $4,000. Now it's $5,000. So now the new appraised value of the vehicle is based on $5,000 because of the repair quote, which then, of course, that puts you at the place where you're right at the borderline of having to pay any federal interest. So in our case, as an organization, when we've disposed of vehicles, it's really been to our advantage to pay the money and get the repair quotes for the vehicles so that we kind of have a real operating point in terms of what we can expect to ask for the vehicles, and then also whether there's a risk that we're going to have to pay any federal share back. So any questions about that or comments? Okay, next slide. Okay, determining fair market value, city of Phoenix. So for standard non-accessible vehicles without repairs needed, the city of Phoenix researches Kelly Blue Book and or NADA guide. So again, City of Phoenix really comes through on this, and they will look up the value of a vehicle based on Kelley Blue Book or NADA. And so again, it really helps again if the vehicle needs repairs to have a repair quote, because I have found that oftentimes, for one, Kelley Blue Book, it's just sort of statistical information that's constantly floating based on the market and what's going on. And you can only really say the vehicle is excellent, good, or fair. You know, you might have a vehicle that's really less than fair, but it doesn't need to be fixed. It's just old. You might not really get a true value of that vehicle. So even though it says non-accessible vehicles without repairs needed, everything that gets old enough needs some kind of repair. So you can always kind of look at that. So again, the City of Phoenix will do that appraisal for you. Okay, next slide. Okay. So there's 4 options if you have a standard non-accessible vehicle with significant repair needs. Now we have a minivan that needs a lot of repairs. Okay, so you can get 3 as-is proposals on the value of that, which is really a lot of work to get 3 proposals on one vehicle. But however, that's an option. Or you can get 1 written repair quote from a qualified vendor and give that to the City of Phoenix. They look up Kelley Blue Book, and then the repair costs will be used in conjunction with the Kelley Blue Book or not a repair or not repair, but the appraisal. And then the fair market value is based on that. Or you can repair the vehicle yourself, and then the City of Phoenix will research Kelley Blue Book. So I could say, okay, this vehicle needs a bunch of repairs. I'm going to get everything fixed up, and then I'm going to get a value on this vehicle. And maybe it's because I want to keep them, or maybe I want to buy out the federal interest, or hard to say, you know, but again, these are 4 different options. And then the last option is you can take it to auction. That's something that I know providers have used. And if there's anybody on the call that's used the auction, I'd love to hear from you. We had decided we were going to take some of our old ADOT vehicles to auction, and we decided against it. There's some easy parts about that, and there's some difficult parts about it. One is, the easy part is you don't really have to get any appraisals on it. The auction, it becomes the auction's responsibility to just sell the vehicle at for the highest possible dollar amount. You get whatever the vehicle sells for minus their fee. And then you also pay to take the vehicle to auction to begin with. And what we found out when we were getting ready to do it is we thought, well, some of these vehicles were so old that we might have had to have towed them to the auction, and then they get auctioned. And if the auction company gets anything for it, we just get a portion of that. Plus we have to spend $250 to take it to auction. And then if it doesn't sell, then we'd have to tow it back again. So we just decided we would try to just sell them outright, which we ended up doing, and ended up working okay with us. But like I said, I've spoken to people before that have said they have used the auction process and they've used it successfully. So again, like I said, if anybody's out there that's done that before, I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so you've determined fair market value now. You know how to do it. You know what your options are. if the vehicle's fair market value is less than 5,000 and considered beyond useful life. So remember, there's actual numbers that determine useful life. The vehicle can be retained, sold, or otherwise disposed of with no federal interest due back to the FTA. This includes selling, donating, or otherwise disposing of the vehicle. The value has to be obtained in accordance with the City of Phoenix guideline to ensure the value is at or below $5,000 and also beyond useful life. And process must be followed while in consult with the City of Phoenix. So again, the thing that I've found that's been really helpful is the folks at the City of Phoenix are very helpful in have been very helpful in supporting us through the process. But it's really important to stay in touch with them and make sure they know everything that you're doing as you do it, so that you're not missing anything, because there just are a lot of pieces involved in doing it. So, next slide. Okay, selling a vehicle privately, of course, you have to know what the fair market value is. It has to have already been obtained, and the sales have to be open to the public, and the vehicles have to be sold for the highest possible return. So when we've sold vehicles, we put them on our agency website, we put them on our agency Facebook page, we put them on OfferUp, and any other kind of online publication. So anything that you have that you can show that you made these sales open to the public is considered adequate. So again, like I said, we did OfferUp, Facebook, and agency website, and actually that's how people found out about us. So the whole idea of making them open to the public worked. So and then again, vehicles have to be sold for the highest possible return. Now, that's an item that's important to be in touch with the City of Phoenix about in terms of what is highest possible return, because it might be that the fair market value has been determined to be $4,800, but you can't get an offer over 4,000 or 3,000 or something like that. So the highest possible return may not be fair market value, but nonetheless, it's the highest possible return. So it's important to let people at the City of Phoenix know we have 3 offers on this vehicle. The highest offer is this. And then in our case, the folks at the City of Phoenix said, sounds good, go for it, you know. But again, that's something to talk to them about as you're going through the process. Next slide. Auction. Again, auction or third party private dealer. You have to have a written contract with the auction company. The vehicle is sold at the highest possible return. And the fair process would require a sufficient number of wholesale dealers interested in acquiring the vehicle. So that's usually where wholesale dealers go, is to the auction to buy vehicles. And the City of Phoenix policy does not indicate that fair market value must be obtained prior to using this method. Now, if you went to use the method, somebody might suggest that you do that. And I think that's why I say the policy doesn't indicate that. That doesn't mean that somebody from the City of Phoenix won't ask you to get fair market value. They may do that too. And so sometimes policies don't contain everything. And so it's important that you sort of have a relationship with the rep from the City of Phoenix that you're working with. Okay, next slide. Grantee vehicle disposal, selling, fair market value has to be obtained. If it's a grantee to grantee, the vehicle can be transferred to another 5310 grantee. So that means you can just transfer your vehicle to another 5310 grantee if it's before the end of the useful life, and the federal interest of the vehicle is transferred with the vehicle. So what that means is that I'm working with an organization, Dawn from TCH, which is they're close by Chandler Gilbert Arc. Let's say we have a vehicle and we just don't need it anymore. They need a vehicle, and I say, hey, we have a vehicle that's before its useful life. Um, we'd like to transfer it to you. Our boards of directors get together and we create this sort of legal action for recipient to recipient transfer. We request that the title be either sent to us or that the title be changed from us to the organization that's getting the vehicle, or the city of Phoenix may decide to just keep the title as the city of Phoenix and approve the transfer. So all of those things can happen. That's an option that you also have. And I think it's usually something that's more likely to happen or potentially more appropriate if a vehicle or an agency is going out of business and they want to just give their vehicles up. That sort of thing. So that's another option. And again, that has to be before the end of useful life is reached. So before 4 years / 100,000 miles for minivans, or 5 years, 150 for lift vans. Next slide. Okay. So yay for you, you sold a vehicle. Okay. And again, by this time, you should have, the people at the city of Phoenix should already know that you were going to sell the vehicle, and they've already told you, yeah, go for it, sell the vehicle. Now, this slide I added yesterday, that there is a whole list of items that are supposed to be provided once the sale takes place. Has to be provided to the city of Phoenix. So Lauren, if you can share the document that I sent you, I'd appreciate it. Great, thank you. So I just made this because we just so I think I mentioned earlier, we just sold our first vehicle that was acquired through Section 5310, City of Phoenix. So it was a 2014 minivan that we sold. And so that's why I created this, because we actually sold the vehicle. So all of these pieces here came or have been lifted directly from the City of Phoenix policy. And so I just made this template. And as you can see, it talks about the make, model, and year, the plate number, the VIN, the federal award information number. I didn't know what that was, and the folks at the City of Phoenix said, don't worry about it, we'll fill that out. Useful life and any useful life exceptions. I think when I filled it out, I said this vehicle is beyond its useful life because it has X number of miles. And then the year the vehicle was awarded, the grant number under which the vehicle was awarded, when we put it into service, when we removed it from service, the original cost, including federal and local share. So we had all the contracts for all that information. So it was easy to find. Original cost, and then the last reported mileage and condition. Can you go page down? Let's see. Okay. Yeah, amount and date of final disposal. So that's the date really when it was sold. And I think I said it was sold for this amount. There was no federal interest due. And then the written record of fair market valuation. So in this case, I had not only the repair quote, but I also had the Kelly Blue Book information that had been furnished to me by the city of Phoenix. So I just scanned copies of that and included that with this packet. Written record of fair market valuation and method used to determine fair market value. Again, I think I wrote that Kelly Blue Book less repair quote. And in this case, this vehicle had repair needs in excess of the appraised value, meaning essentially the vehicle was worth less than nothing as it relates to all that information. So I was able to provide all that. And again, the sale information, the final sale, who the buyer was, the proof of public advertisement. So I took screenshots of our Facebook page, web page, and OfferUp, printed them, scanned them, put them in the packet. And checking the amount of federal interest, there was none, so I said NA. And then vehicle maintenance records, logs, and receipts since last submitted annual report. So this vehicle was actually removed from service prior to the milestone progress report being due. So there was nothing else. And so I think I indicated that that information was already provided with the milestone progress report. So, so again, this document here is available if you're selling a vehicle and you want to use it. It's fine with me. Obviously, you have to put your own logo on it or whatever. But again, this information also was lifted directly from the City of Phoenix policy. And when I sent them everything, and the entire packet, which was like 11 different things, they just said, congratulations, you're good to go. So as far as I know, everything that I provided was worked out okay. It all got submitted to the transit manager and the grants administrator, who is going to be who your contact is as you're going through the sale process. Any questions? Okay, you can close that, Lauren. Thank you. Marcia is saying share the file. Absolutely. I'm happy to. Lauren, if you wouldn't mind just putting that, if you're able to put that file in the chat box somehow, that would be great.
I'll get that put in there for you.
All right, thank you so much. And maybe you can put the hyperlink too while you're at it to the City of Phoenix policy. Okay, so one of the pieces of this whole idea of vehicle disposals is sort of our end game is to try to come up with a policy that works for both City of Phoenix vehicles and ADOT vehicles. So we haven't gotten there yet, but it's something that we're working on. And probably by the time we get there, all the ADOT vehicles will be gone because it's been so long, but we'll see. It's certainly a similar process. It's got some variations to it. It's all based on FTA guidelines, so it's all federal stuff, but there are some differences. So next slide. And so some of the stuff that I have written here comes from the ADOT policy and procedure manual for vehicle disposals. So the reasons: current underutilization, regional needs determine a better use for the vehicle elsewhere, the agency's going out of business, agencies are consolidating, and it's not yet met the minimum useful life, transfer rather than sale, and pass the MUL, sale as a method of disposal. So that's reasons according to ADOT for disposing. Next slide. So you'll see that, yeah, the minivan and the minivan with no ramp and the maxi van with lift are the same as they are with the City of Phoenix policy. The minivan with ramp is an additional passenger van with no lift, and the cutaway is a little bit different too. So there's a little bit more complexity in the useful life guidelines. However, these are lifted again, like I said, directly from the city or from the ADOT policy book. And so again, if you have an ADOT vehicle that you're getting rid of, these are good things to look at. If you're in this district, which I think you probably all are, any vehicle you have through ADOT is going to be way past the minimum useful life. However, if you're out of the Phoenix area and you're still applying for vehicles through ADOT, this could be a real use for you. The time that the vehicle is used in the transit service is defined as useful life. Vehicles that have been replaced should continue to be utilized as a backup as long as the vehicle can be used with normal maintenance costs. And a vehicle that has become a cost burden due to a maintenance issues can be removed from the fleet with permission from ADOT, which is important. The vehicle that we just got rid of, we got 3 of those minivans in 2014, and they are just a bad model. They have a bad reputation. The camshafts and the engines mess up, and they cost a lot of money to fix. And like I said, that vehicle, the repair quote for that vehicle was in excess of $7,000 when we got rid of it. And it had less than 100,000 miles on it, but it was really old. So it was still beyond its useful life, even though it didn't have that many miles. But so it's kind of a good statement for that to be in the ADOT manual, because they really means that they're looking at it with some practicality in terms of how much does it cost to keep a vehicle going versus buying a new one. Okay, next page. Okay, there's a vehicle disposal request form that has to be done first before disposing of any vehicle. So this is there is the hyperlink to that disposal request form, and it gets submitted to the program manager, and they determine whether it's approved for sale. And then then you go ahead and sort of move forward with the process. But the vehicle disposal request form is a critical item in disposing of any vehicle, and it's always the thing that you do first. And it's an important thing to hang on to, because once you've completed that, if the vehicle gets sold and you want to do the page that talks about everything about the vehicle and how much you sold it for and what the VIN is and what the plate number is and all that, that's all on the disposal request form. And so it's really helpful to be able to have that. And I think we even submitted it with all the sale documents just because it contains so much important information. So, so again, both with ADOT and with the City of Phoenix, you have to do that. You do that before you do anything else. Okay, so I think that is pretty much it for disposals. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Next section is vehicle lending. Okay. Okay. Why bother loaning your vehicle to anybody? Well, you avoid duplicative or overlapping services. You reduce service gaps and increases in services. You meet 5310 coordination requirements. Again, if you participate in a vehicle lending arrangement with any organization and you're able to do that and you have the resources to do that, it is, as was mentioned earlier, sort of the gold standard of coordination. And so it's looked at very favorably when your 5310 application gets reviewed, because people know that you're really putting your best foot forward to coordinate with other people. Safety and reliability, and it's cost effective via donations and savings. And so in some cases, I think within our vehicle lending program, we tell people we can't charge you to use our vehicle, but you're welcome to donate to our organization if you use our vehicle. And in some cases, people have done that. Okay, next page. And then there is that. So this is an example of some folks that we loan our vehicle to, and we've done it for a number of years. They are with Valley Center of the Deaf, and it's really a great arrangement because they are all folks that actually need a vehicle at the time when we don't need it as much. It's usually Monday through Friday between 11 and about 2. And so they don't have as much transportation and as many vehicles as they need to be able to get out as often as they want to. And so this arrangement has worked out really well for us. Next page. Okay, next one after that. So if you decide that you want to do this, one thing that we found as an organization and trying to really sell the idea to administration, and we've been doing it long enough to where I was not the executive director when we first started loaning our vehicle. I was the director of operations. And so I was needing to sort of really answer to our board of directors, answer to the executive director, make sure that answer to people in HR to make sure that our liability was being really minimized in this process, because that's what everybody always asks about. How do you do the insurance thing? And so, and we'll talk about that some more. But the thing that I found was keeping the process really clear and going a little at a time. So when we first started doing this, it was back easily 20 years ago, that I was working with somebody from the city of Chandler who was part of the therapeutic recreation program. They had a summer program they were running to where they wanted to take like 6 or 8 kids to a pool for 5 weeks, 3 or 4 days a week. They knew who the kids were. They knew how far it was to the pool. They were going to go straight to the pool and come straight back. And everything was defined really clearly. And so in doing that, as they started to sort of prepare my request to be able to do vehicle sharing with them, I was able to present it as, this is how far they're going to go. There's going to be one driver. There's going to be these kids. You know, this is how many miles they're going to go per week, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what our insurance broker used when they approached the insurance company and said, hey, they want to do this. And so we were actually able to write our policy to enable people to use the vehicle. And it was at no additional policy cost for us also. Okay, next page. This worked because we had a good broker who was really an advocate for us. We kept the plan clear. We made sure that the whole idea of federal 5310 requirements, United We Ride, federal legislation was all really clearly stated when we presented this to our broker and our insurance. And we created a strategy to really minimize legal liability. And next slide. So finding sharing partners, this is just an example of places where you can go, or places that have approached us before too, about wanting to use our vehicles. And we've done it with a couple of organizations. And the one that was in the picture a little bit ago, still continues to use our vehicle. They actually used 2 of our vehicles like a month ago, and kept them overnight, like for a whole week or a weekend, I think. And that worked out really well. So we're really pleased to be able to provide that service. Okay, next page. Okay, so in terms of a process, the way we have our process set up is we have a standard operating procedure for how to do vehicle loaning. We have an application, and we have a vehicle sharing agreement. So the bottom line is that if somebody wants to use our vehicle, the first thing they do is they apply. And we have documents for all of this stuff. And they're all documents that we have shared with many organizations, and we'd be willing to share with whomever wants to use them. And also the standard operating procedure, the sharing agreement, all that stuff. And our broker, he likes business. So he has done these trainings with me before. But the bottom line is, somebody inquires about using your vehicle, you first have them do an application. And so once they fill it out, they kind of talk to what is it they need, how often do they need it, for how long do they need it, how many miles are they going to be going, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of information like that. Usually follow that with a face-to-face or virtual meeting, and you kind of get to discuss some of the details of how the vehicle is going to be used. For example, the last time Valley Center of the Deaf used our vehicle, they actually used it on the weekend, and they returned it at night. And so we created a whole option to where they had a lockbox that they could get the key out of, and they put the key back into, and different things like that. So there's a lot of trust that goes along with that, and the relationship is really important with the person you're working with. Also, within the sharing application and within the sharing agreement, there's all the insurance requirements. And we can go to the next page. So whoever's using their vehicle, they have to have an MDB clearance, MVD. They have to sign a volunteer agreement form with your agency. And they have to have driver training, whether it be PASS or their own training or training that we provide. It's all about what the insurance company will accept. And to go along with that too, the verbiage on the van sharing agreement in terms of insurance has a whole section of the person borrowing your vehicle has to put you as additionally insured on their policy. And also they have to have coverage, like rented and non-owned coverage rider on their insurance policy, so that they can use our vehicle. So that whole idea, what that is like, it's like if you go to Enterprise to rent a vehicle and they say, do you want to buy our insurance? Sometimes people will buy their insurance, or other times your own insurance will have a rider on it for rental cars. A lot of agencies have that already on their insurance policy, so that their employees can use their personal vehicles for company business, for example. And so many insurance companies have that rider on their policy already, that can be used. So, and then there's a bunch of coverage limits that are all involved in that. So again, if anybody gets to the place where you think that you're interested in doing this and you want to learn more, just let me know. All the documents I'm happy to share, and all of the stuff that we use, that we developed, I'm happy to share in terms of the insurance. And I'm also happy to share the name of our broker if you're interested in that as well. So, and so that's sort of in a nutshell for that. So let's go to the next page. So then there's the whole process. Once you create that relationship, how do they get the vehicle? How do they record mileage? I mean, when somebody uses our vehicle, it's like they're an employee. They have to do our mileage record form. They have to know about our fleet services manual. They need to know contact protocol. They need to know breakdown, accident reporting. What if they get a ticket? What if, any of that kind of stuff, transportation policies, and anything that's specific to our program, they have to know. So it's just like if they were a volunteer driver with the agency, they have to follow all those practices. I think we've had one breakdown the whole time that the Valley Center of the Desk been using our vehicle. And it was an issue with one of the lifts on the vehicle. And we had one person that got a photo radar ticket. No accidents, but they got a ticket. And we had that ticket sent to that driver, and it got taken care of. So any questions, comments? Okay, next slide. Okay, challenges, of course. Next slide. Finding the time to put this all together. I will tell you, when we first started doing it, it took a lot of time because we had to sort of create the entire sort of loaning infrastructure. But now that it's in place, it's not that hard to do. The mechanics of sharing, the risk management, the documentation, the cost allocation, the affordability. As you can imagine, there's some degree of trust in the other agency that you have to have. And I've spoken to one person I know that had a sharing relationship like this with another organization, and they'd like bring the vehicle back and it wasn't filled up and it was a mess and all this kind of stuff, and they felt like it kind of didn't make them very eager to want to continue to work with that organization. So there's some of that there's some really mutual respect stuff that has to go on, and some sharing that has to happen. And in order to manage those sorts of challenges. Information about sharing opportunities, resources, and needs of other agencies. It's a challenge sometimes to just be able to say, okay, I have this vehicle. Here's the times when I really don't need it. If anybody needs it, let me know. And then, you can work with your organization and we can figure out an arrangement, And then, of course, there's safety regulations. There's all the safety stuff that goes along with the vehicle, and those are training issues. Next slide. Okay, liability, liability, liability. It's always the big question that everybody has. And gaining agency support, it's always a question everybody has too. And the thing that people are most frequently worried about is the issue of liability. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that any organization that needs to borrow our van has to have rented or non-owned coverage rider on their policy, and they also have to name us as additionally insured on their policy. And what that does is that puts the liability in the event of an accident into the first position if there was to be some kind of an accident and some kind of a settlement or a lawsuit or something like that. It's because they had that rider on their policy. It makes that policy be in position one for any insurance company that, that wants to settle with them or whatever. So again, that's one of the most key items. And then, of course, all the coverage limits are really important as well. Um, Gaining agency support is really a challenge too. Um, Oftentimes I know people come to my training and maybe you're a fleet manager or you have some kind of a position like that to where, trying to get the higher ups within your organization to be willing to go along with some kind of an arrangement like this can definitely be a challenge. I understand that and I appreciate that. I was the director of operations, I think, when I first started doing this, and then I was the executive director. So I didn't have to go as far as maybe some people have to go in order to get approval for things like that. So I appreciate that for anybody who's motivated to want to try to do this, but is not sure how to approach the higher ups within their organization. I will tell you that I'm always happy as part of being a mobility manager too, to come to your organization or to speak with anybody within your organizations about this option and sort of advocate for the option um, if you ever want me to. So I'm definitely happy to do that. So again, challenges: coordinate, finding partners, and making everybody happy, making the infrastructure within your own organization happy, making the person that wants to use your vehicle happy, making the insurance company happy, etc. So, okay, next slide. And I think there is a survey question. Interesting. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate that. This kind of information is really important and helpful, and um, it's great to have an opportunity to look at because I look at that as I'm sort of designing subsequent trainings to try to kind of get an idea of a cross section of the kind of issues people are dealing with. So um, it's nice to see that 71% of people don't have a vehicle to share. So that's great. That means you uh, have what you need, but you don't have too much. So, okay, next slide. So again, why bother sharing? And go to the next slide because you can be a rock star on collaboration. So Lauren, if you're able to play that YouTube clip, that would be really great.
I'm just skipping through the ads really quick.
Oh, okay, cool.
I like to get out. Sharon Brooks lives at Apache ASL Trails, residence apartments in Tempe designed specifically for people who are deaf or hearing impaired.
Because it can be very boring staying at home isolated.
Today's group outing? Grocery shopping. But this trip has a twist. It's made possible through a unique program known as vehicle sharing. It involves vehicles acquired through a federal grant program, where participating in coordination efforts is a key requirement.
You can either share rides or you can share vehicles.
The nonprofit agency, Chandler Gilbert ARC, is a leading example of an agency successfully sharing an accessible vehicle. Rather than having the vehicle sit in a parking lot when not in use, the nonprofit lends it out, in this case to Apache Trails ASL, doubling the resources available to the region.
We would like to share the resources to all of our stakeholders so they have the same opportunity to be able to participate in a program such as sharing of vehicles, which can really impact their consumers and get them to the places that they want to go.
For all social service providers, the lack of transportation is one of the most often cited challenges. Public transit options may not always be the best fit. That's why MAG is working to expand the program, holding vehicle sharing workshops every quarter to encourage other organizations to give it a try.
Because of the nature of the way our program works,
Billy Parker is one of MAG's mobility managers. He helps provide information and resources. Sharing vehicles isn't always easy.
It's a real challenge to get your fleet insurance company to let another organization use your vehicle.
But the results are worth it.
So our goal really is for anyone that needs our vehicles to be able to enter into a relationship with us, to where if a vehicle is extra for whatever reason, or if we're on downtime, that someone that needs that vehicle can borrow it from us.
Under a contract agreement, Chandler Gilbert ARC provided the van for today's trip. Driver Crystal Wright says it's easy to set up.
I send them an email and I'm like, hey, can I borrow a van at this time, this date? They're like, great, that works.
Crystal works for the Valley Center of the Deaf and often takes clients where they need to go.
And so I drive them to various stores to support them and allow access to food shopping or events like fundraisers and other things.
That may be their only lifeline to the outside world and getting to medical appointments or being socially active.
Vehicle sharing is one of the outreach programs supported by the Maricopa Association of Governments, or MAG. Didi Gastia works with MAG's partner agencies to develop strategies that can meet the transportation needs for older adults and persons with disabilities. Considering there are more than 420,000 individuals with a disability in the region, MAG encourages other agencies to consider vehicle sharing.
It just contributes to a healthy lifestyle that people can have if they're able to get out into the community.
The folks at Apache ASL Trails say they aren't sure what they would do without the program.
That would be really scary. What do I do about grocery shopping? I mean, I have to get around and I can't drive, so I'd be stuck. Oh yes, absolutely, oh yes. It would be very nice if we could do it 2 times a week or even 1 time a week.
Parker says the goal of vehicle sharing is to ensure that people in the community who need transportation get transportation.
It helps to combine resources so that people can access their community the way they need to, and it's good karma.
As the population continues to grow and age, it's essential to explore all types of transportation options.
When you have a society that's mobile, that is accessible, it benefits everybody.
For more information on how you can participate in regional transportation activities, please contact MAG at 602-254-6300 or search the MAG website for Connect a Ride.
Good deal. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you sharing that. That was a video that was made.
Neuropathy is irreversible and there's purpose. The medical system lies to us, but there is a miracle.
Sounds like a commercial. So that video was made by folks at MAG. They're sort of audio-visual people to really sort of illustrate the way that the vehicle loaning process works. We made that several years ago. And as I mentioned, we continue to have a really great relationship with Valley Center of the Deaf. It's really a particularly good relationship with them as well, because they have been in, they've had stable people within their organization. I mean, Crystal Wright, that was in the video, is still the contact that we have for sharing, and she's still the person that I work with, which is really nice because it gives us a great amount of confidence. And like I said, they were recently, I think it was October, it might have been September, but they were wanting to provide a lot of rides to a bunch of people to some kind of an event at Ability 360 that was happening like a conference of some kind over the course of like 3 days. And so that's the first time we actually had them use our vehicle and keep it overnight. And we arranged all that. And again, they have been really excellent, very conscientious about making all that stuff work. And it's been a really great relationship. And so I would really encourage, you know, if you have that resource and you are interested in it, and you have a partner, a potential partner to share with, contact me. I'll help you with it. We've been doing it for years, and we can make that happen. So also vehicle disposals. Again, as I mentioned, we've disposed of vehicles through ADOT. We've disposed of them now as of like 2 days ago or last week. Also through the city of Phoenix. So we have we're pretty dialed in on the process. And again, as a mobility manager, it's part of our responsibility to provide that resource to you, and we're happy to do that. Also, my information is on the MAG website, which is available there to you. And I think all the documents that we use for vehicle sharing, I believe, are still on the MAG website too. And as I mentioned, if you want to look at them in more detail, they're all there. I think they're even Word documents. If you want to take them and change the verbiage, make it fit whatever your needs are, you're welcome to do that. They are open source documents as far as I'm concerned. So again, you can also contact Didi Gastia, who I have worked with for years and through this whole process. And Didi is a really excellent resource. So next slide. Again, educate yourself and your team. Become a transportation ambassador, and you're all 5310 recipients already, so you probably don't need that hyperlink on the details of the 5310 program. Next slide. Okay, so City of Chandler, we haven't shared with them for a long time, but we still have a relationship for that to share with them. And they were, again, as I mentioned, our first sharing partner. And the fact that they're a municipality and we were able to make it happen was always something that kind of really put the program in a very bright light in terms of it being a standard. Also, our whole vehicle loaning process, we've shared that information with the Community Transportation Association of America, and they've written stuff about it in their newsletter that goes out all over the country and different things like that. So it's, again, like I mentioned, it's something that has really gained a lot of traction, not just here in the Valley, but really nationwide. And so we continue to work on it and continue to advocate for it. Silverleaf Insurance, that's our broker, who he is the head of Silverleaf Insurance Group. His name is Bob Ramsey. If you're ever interested in a good broker, contact me, I'll hook you up. And then STARS is an organization that we have an arrangement with. They're in Scottsdale. They had somebody they were supporting that was out in the East Valley in East Mesa, and they had a clearly defined need, and we created all the documents, put everything together like we needed to do it, and then that need changed, and they never used our vehicle, but the relationship remains. Next slide. So again, resource sharing, really, that's the question for the day. How can we make it easier? I just encourage you all to always ask those questions. See how can we combine our resources in a non-competitive way, and really work together and really put the people that we're supporting as the focal point in why we do what we do, and really look at that through sharing of resources, whether it be vehicles, whether it be employees, whether it be ideas or anything like that. Next slide. Off you go, slide after that. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
There are none in the chat box.
Okay, thank you, Marcia, for your comment. Appreciate that. And want to just go to the last slide on here. That's just my information, and also Lauren's information. And again, as a sub-regional mobility manager, I'm really happy to support you with transportation stuff in whatever way, or with whatever need you have, whether it be vehicle disposals, vehicle loaning, understanding more about brokerage systems, or stuff that we didn't even talk about today that relates to transportation, just resources and things like that. Always happy to be here to support other organizations. So if nobody has any questions, really appreciate everybody coming to the training, and you get 15 minutes of your time back too. So that's really terrific. So Lauren, anything else, final thing to add?
Just a reminder that if anyone would like a certificate of attendance, let me know and I will get that sent over to you today.
Awesome. All right. So if that's all there is, then we can sign off.